The COVID-19 crisis and its accompanying quarantine have significantly altered our American way of life. It has attacked both our security and our schedules, two elements that had become such a natural part of the American dream. They've now been deconstructed. Imposing social distancing has brought us face to face with the truth that actually people matter more than our schedules, and that our loved ones matter more than our financial security. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and when I asked him what his favorite part of the quarantine was, he replied, "That's easy. Dinner every night with my family." So many of the things we pursued before that we deem so important have come to an abrupt halt, giving each of us the remarkable opportunity now, as the treadmill has stopped, that what will we give our life to? Albert Einstein once said, "Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted." I think Einstein was saying is that there are certain values that you can't put a number on. There are certain qualities of character that can't be measured. But in the long run, they count. And some of the things you were counting, acceleration up the corporate ladder, finding your identity in the square footage of your house, maybe it's time to consider how important those really are. You know, there's a line in our Declaration of Independence that we all know. One we probably learned as school-age children, one that I believe has been severely misapplied. It goes like this: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Now, while our founding fathers were clear that each of us were given these rights by the Creator, they didn't tell us why we were given them or how we should use them. And I think we mistakenly thought that they were our rights after all. They were for us to be used by us, and so we defended them vigorously for us. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness became the cornerstones of the American dream, a dream we made about us, what we wanted, what we desired, a dream that has now been deconstructed. Now, you may not have chosen how your dream would be deconstructed, but you can choose how it will be reconstructed. It struck me recently that I had never taken these three words and traced them through the Bible. What did the Bible say about them? Well, the Declaration was silent on how they should be used. The Bible isn't. What if our life was meant to be given away? What if our liberty was meant to be used for others? And what if our pursuit of happiness was best discovered in service to the Creator? What if we had wrongly assumed that these rights were ours to be used by us and for us? And what if in our busyness we'd never stop to ask, why did the Creator give us those rights anyway? And how could we best use them? That discovery is the purpose of this Take 20 video. Jesus said a great deal about life. Listen, he said, "I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord." Jesus models for us that the best use of one's life isn't to spend it on yourself, but to lay it down for others. Even in this postmodern era, that still remains the most honored form of spending one's life. Think about it for a moment. Our typical heroes, professional athletes and entertainers, have been relegated to the sidelines as we honor those who give up their life, healthcare workers and first responders. Teachers who are laboring to get their content across to their students through the internet, they too are now applauded. I think this is such a good cultural readjustment. I just hope it sticks. John the Apostle communicated the same truth when he said, "By this we know love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers." He goes on to say, "But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him?" When God's love motivates you, your actions will naturally sacrifice your wants for another's needs. The more one lives in a first world country, however, the more difficult it becomes to give up what we want for others' needs. For just a moment, consider this chart. At the close of this past year, the United States citizens controlled nearly 30% of the world's wealth. But note, at only 329 million people, we only comprise 4.25% of the world's population. By comparison, our next nearest population neighbor is Indonesia, with about 270 million people. And when we compare them, we discover that Indonesia maintains only half of 1% of the world's wealth. Or consider India. They have nearly 4 times our population, yet they maintain only 3.5% of the world's wealth. Or think of the continent of Africa. With 16% of the world's population, yet only 3 of its 54 countries are even counted on the wealth chart. The vast majority of Africans survive on less than $14 a day. By contrast, the average American has disposable income of $125 per day. Sadly, those who suffer most in these areas most often are the children. They are the ones in the impoverished areas who are most hurting. So here's what we ought to think of with the new dream that we're reconstructing. Not how that money could be taken from us, but how we could give it freely. Remember, our life is meant to be given away. What could we do to help the children in this world? Not what could an organization or a government or even your church body do, but what could you do? For years, my family has supported children through Compassion International and the Baptist Haiti Mission. For about $1 a day, we're able to provide food, medical care, and education for children living in some really difficult places. Just last night, we had the chance to experience the reality of what happens when someone invests in a child like that. We said goodbye to a young man who's been in our area here for a few years now. He was a product of the child sponsorship program in a third world country. He's now 28. He passed all of his boards to become a medical doctor, and he now begins his residency in the U.S. in hopes of becoming a neurosurgeon. But not a neurosurgeon to serve in the U.S. His goal has always been to return to his third world country and become the first neurosurgeon in that country. And yet, when he was a child, someone reached out and cared for him through a child sponsorship. All this took place because someone was willing to sacrifice some of their wants for another's needs. The Creator endowed you with life that you might lay it down for another. The American missionary to the Auca Indians of Ecuador, Jim Elliot, once said, "He is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." Now, the Creator has endowed us with certain rights: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Our life was meant to be given away. Our liberty, the freedom to do what we want, was never intended to be spent upon ourselves, but to be used for others. In a first world country, freedoms expand because of the collaboration of time and wealth. There are ways that your money has saved you time. There's a good chance you didn't have to go out and prepare a 1 to 2 acre plot of ground and raise crops for the existence of your family. All the time that was spent preparing the land and growing the land and harvesting the land, you simply took your money and went to the grocery store and bought the food. You drive to work because you own a car as opposed to having to walk to work. There are ways that time has made you money. Over time, your 401k, stocks, bonds, and other investments work on your behalf while you're working elsewhere. The collaboration of these two resources, time and money, grants tremendous freedoms. And technology, in our world, has only accelerated these freedoms. Fast food? Hit Chick-fil-A. Fast shopping? Get the Amazon app. Fast entertainment? Binge watch on Netflix. The combination of time and money grants greater freedoms. But what if those freedoms, what if those liberties granted to first world citizens were not meant to be spent on themselves, but used for the aid of others? Jesus told a story of 3 men who had equal freedoms, They had the same amount of money, they had the same amount of time, but only one of the three used those resources for another who was in need. Listen to the story. Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he crossed over and passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. And then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day," notice time, "he took 2 denarii, notice money, and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back.' Then Jesus said, 'Which of these three do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers?' And he said, 'The one who showed him mercy.' And Jesus said to him, 'You go and do likewise.'" Galatians also records it this way: "For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters, but don't live your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. For the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself." Now, the word freedom here means freedom from restraint and obligation. It can refer to freedom from the law, as it does in Galatians. It can refer to freedom from sin, as it does in John 8. Or in a civil sense, it means freedom from slavery. While it can mean all of those things in the Bible, the question is, how is such freedom to be spent? Remember, the priest, the Levite, and the Good Samaritan, they all had freedom, but only one of them spent their freedom and used it for the sake of another. The Nelson Study Bible adds this helpful comment on the Galatians passage. It says, "A person can be tempted to view freedom as a selfish opportunity for the flesh. In other words, an opportunity to do whatever one wants to do. But Paul points out that true Christian liberty is the freedom to serve one another in love." Now remember, in a first world country, freedoms expand because of the collaboration of time and wealth. Are you using your freedoms that have expanded for yourself or for the sake of others? There is one final right that our founding fathers declared for us: the pursuit of happiness. The word pursuit makes such a right active. It doesn't promise happiness. It simply means we can go after what we think will bring us that. Yet the world in which we pursue happiness is equally fraught with dangers and disappointments and tragedies and incalculable grief. And the pursuit of happiness is marked with a world full of broken expectations. Which of us hasn't chased something, believing it would make us happy, and when we attained it, discovered it didn't give us the thrill we thought it would? Worse, sometimes it awakened within us a thirst and a hunger that couldn't be quenched. Our pursuit of happiness for ourselves only brought chains and addictions. The psalmist provided another venue. He wrote, "Delight yourselves in the Lord, and he will give you the desire of your heart." C.S. Lewis reminds us that our desires were not too strong, they were too weak. Here's what he says: "Our desires are not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased." Jesus affirmed this same idea when he said, "But seek first the kingdom of God, and these things will be added to you." Jesus reminds us that our focus in what we pursue, what we think will bring us happiness, is really important. that we should be pursuing something of eternal value, not something temporal. John Piper said it this way: God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in Him. You see, our pursuit of happiness will never be satisfied by the things and people we think will satisfy us, but only in pursuing God and His kingdom priorities. These are self-evident truths that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Remember, in reconstructing the American dream, your life was meant to be given away. Your liberty was meant to be used for others. And the pursuit of happiness is best found in the service of the Creator. I'm Phil Moser, and this has been Take 20, Restructuring the American Dream.